When Donald Trump accused Barack Obama of being the reason America was falling apart, no one expected Obama's quiet silence to flip the narrative and shake the country to its core. The air in Fort Myers, Florida was thick that night. Thousands packed the outdoor venue, red hats swaying through the crowd, signs waving, chants rolling in like thunder. It wasn't just another rally. People had stood in the heat for hours, waiting for one thing: Trump stepping onto that stage and saying the words that made them feel part of something bigger. When he finally reached the microphone, his voice boomed with familiar confidence. But the line he dropped that night wasn't familiar at all. "You want to know the real reason America is broken?" he asked, pausing just long enough for the entire crowd to lean forward. "It's Barack Obama." The words sliced straight through the humid air. The crowd exploded, cheers, boos, gasps. Phones shot up instantly. News crews hunting for a quick soundbite suddenly found themselves looking at a political bombshell. Trump wasn't tossing a simple jab at a former president. He was opening a new front in a political war that had already left the nation split in half. Near the front row, a woman in her 60s turned to her husband and whispered, "Did he just say that out loud?" Her voice trembled, not with anger, but with the realization that the moment would be replayed on every screen in America before the night was over. As Trump continued, his tone sharpened. He painted Obama as the engineer of division, accusing him of weakening the country and leaving others to put out the fires. Each accusation ignited another roar from the audience. But not everyone was sold. A cluster of young people near the back recorded silently, arms crossed, knowing their TikTok uploads would be online before the rally was even over. A few rows away, a man shouted, "He's not even president anymore." Burning a wave of boos, Trump pointed toward the commotion, shaking his finger as he delivered the line that would go viral across the globe. "Doesn't matter. Obama is the reason for everything you're living through now." It was pure Trump, blunt, loud, theatrical. But what made the moment explosive wasn't just the accusation. It was the timing. The country was already tense, debating the economy, foreign conflicts, and culture wars. Dragging Obama back into the spotlight was like tossing gasoline on an already burning bonfire. Backstage, aides instantly recognized the media gold. "Clip that one whispered, already texting a producer. Within minutes, the first videos hit the internet. Some supporters called it Trump telling hard truths. Others mocked it as a desperate reach. But everyone agreed, the line had landed. On Twitter, hashtags sprang up within half an hour. Trump versus Obama. Real reason broken America. By the time the rally ended, the clip had spread to TikTok, Instagram Reels, and late-night talk shows. CNN ran it non-stop. Fox News framed it as a bold challenge. MSNBC dissected every frame. But while the world reacted, one voice remained silent: Obama's. And that silence was almost louder than the attack itself. People leaned into it. Would he respond? Would he stay above it? Analysts debated it on primetime panels. Some said he'd ignore it. Others predicted a razor-sharp rebuttal. Nobody knew. As crowds left the Florida venue, the energy was buzzing. For many, it felt like another typical Trump show, fiery, loud, electric. But for others, something stuck. Something heavier. Calling out Obama directly, so forcefully, made it feel like a new chapter had just opened. A college student who had filmed the moment spoke into his phone as he walked out, voice shaky but urgent, "I don't think people get it. This isn't just another sound bite. This is about to blow up." And it did. By midnight, every major network had grabbed the story. By morning, breakfast tables from Ohio to Arizona were buzzing with one question: why Obama? Why now? Trump's line had spilled into living rooms, coffee shops, factory break rooms, classrooms. Everyone had an opinion. No one knew what was coming next. What no one realized that night in Fort Myers was that Trump's attack had just handed Obama one of the biggest political openings of his post-White House life. By dawn, the clip had escaped the rally grounds and reached every corner of the country. Diners in Pennsylvania replayed it over and over on flat-screen TVs. In barbershops from Dallas to Phoenix, people debated it over coffee and buzzing clippers. On the Boston subway, commuters leaned against steel poles, scrolling through TikTok as Trump's finger jabbed the air again and again. Obama is the real reason America is broken. Social media became the first battlefield. The clip spread like dry leaves catching fire. On Twitter, a post captioned, "He said what we were all thinking," pulled in 500,000 likes within hours. Right beneath it, another clip with the caption, "This is desperation at its peak," gained traction just as fast. The same video, two different interpretations, splitting timelines down the middle. Cable news treated it like a political emergency. CNN labeled it an escalation. Fox pushed headlines saying Trump had finally taken the gloves off. MSNBC framed it as an attempt to rewrite history. Even international outlets, BBC, Al Jazeera, Sky News, ran it for viewers who didn't usually follow U.S. politics closely. At a Starbucks in Phoenix, two strangers reading the headline on the shop's TV fell into an argument while waiting for their lattes. "He's right," one man said, shaking his head. Everything started going downhill under Obama. The woman beside him snapped back, "Are you serious? He hasn't been in office for almost a decade. How is he responsible for anything happening right now?" Their voices rose until the barista gently slid 2 cups between them. "Venti latte. Grande cappuccino." They grabbed their drinks and stormed out in opposite directions. The rest of the cafe hummed with energy, customers whispering with wide eyes, caught somewhere between amusement and discomfort. But beneath the chatter, something bigger was forming. Analysts, campaign strategists, and reporters were already calculating the political tremors. On podcasts, experts warned that Trump's remarks might backfire by stirring up a wave of Obama nostalgia. Meanwhile, conservative radio personalities doubled down, claiming Trump had finally dared to say what others only whispered. In a bustling Los Angeles newsroom, journalist Carmen Ruiz scrolled through streams of live reactions, shaking her head as she prepared for her segment. "It's unreal," she muttered to her producer. "Teachers in Wisconsin making TikToks, veterans in Florida posting rants. This isn't just politics anymore. It's personal." Her producer shrugged. "That's why it's viral. It feels personal." And he wasn't wrong. By lunchtime, the phrase, "real reason America is broken," had taken on a momentum no campaign could control. People twisted it into jokes, memes, arguments, everything from gas prices to bad dates. Screenshots of Trump's face mid-sentence were plastered with sarcastic captions like, "The real reason my Wi-Fi is broken." Humor hid a growing tension, but one thing was clear, nobody could stop talking about it. One TikTok dominated the afternoon, a high school senior in Cleveland stitching Trump's clip beside Obama's iconic 2008 victory speech. Her caption read, "How did we go from this to that?" It hit 2 million views in a day. The comment section erupted into a digital civil war, half laughing, half furious. Back in Fort Myers, news vans packed the parking lot where the rally had taken place. Reporters swarmed attendees. One man, gripping his MAGA hat, beamed proudly. He finally said what needed saying. A woman in her 40s spoke more cautiously. "I support Trump," she admitted, "but I don't know. That felt like too far." In Washington, murmurs spread through congressional offices and think tanks. A Republican aide confessed to a colleague, "We didn't need this fight. We're talking about Obama instead of Biden." That's a trap. Across town, a Democratic strategist couldn't hide a smirk. "If Trump wants to run against Obama instead of the current administration," she said, "we'll take that matchup any day." Late-night comedians jumped in. On The Tonight Show, the host played the clip before cracking, "So apparently Obama is responsible for inflation, the border, and probably the broken McDonald's ice cream machine." The audience roared, but as the country laughed, argued, and fired off memes, Obama's silence grew louder. Every hour he said nothing, the suspense thickened. CNN debated when he'd respond. Fox suggested he was dodging accountability. MSNBC argued he was choosing his moment with precision. A retired teacher in Ohio put it perfectly, "You can feel it building. We all know he's going to say something, and when he does, it's going to matter." What the public didn't know was that Obama was already shaping his response, and it wasn't going to be what anyone expected. For a full day after Trump's explosive comments, Obama said absolutely nothing. No tweet. No interview. No statement. For a man who once held the most powerful voice on earth, the silence felt seismic. Cable networks tried to fill the void, analyzing his recent speeches for hints, wondering what tone he might take. Would he strike back? Stay above it? The question wasn't if he'd speak, it was how. In Detroit, where Obama was scheduled to appear at a community center, the media arrived before sunrise. Satellite trucks crowded the lot. Reporters gathered by the door with microphones in hand. One cameraman muttered, "Feels like we're waiting for a storm." Inside, Obama sat in a plain conference room with a handful of advisors. Notepads and half-empty coffee cups littered the long table. The atmosphere was tense, but Obama was calm, almost unnervingly so. He listened as his team debated the strategy. One advisor, a sharp-eyed woman with square glasses, leaned forward. "We can't ignore this. He said you broke America. That hits at your entire legacy." A younger staffer countered, "Responding directly gives him exactly what he wants." Suddenly it's Obama versus Trump again. Maybe staying silent is the stronger move. Obama rubbed his chin, thinking for a long moment. Then he asked quietly, "What do people need to hear right now? Not what the networks want. Not what Trump wants. What do Americans need?" The room fell completely still. His question changed the tone. This wasn't about ego, it was about responsibility. Later that evening, away from the chaos, Obama met with an old friend and mentor, retired Pastor Samuel Green. They sat together in a quiet corner of the community center. Samuel's voice was rough from years in the pulpit. "You know he's trying to drag you into the mud," he said gently. "That's his game. But you've always lifted people higher. Don't lose that now." Obama nodded. "I'm not angry at him, Sam. I'm worried. Because if leaders keep teaching people to hate, to blame, it corrodes everything. It makes us smaller. And America can't afford to get smaller." Samuel smiled softly. "Then don't fight him. Show people the difference." Outside, journalists paced in circles, refreshing their phones, waiting for the moment Obama would finally break the silence. Twitter swelled with impatient posts demanding answers. Where is Obama? Why isn't he saying anything? Hashtags like #ObamaResponse shot to the top of the trending list. But still, nothing. Just silence. And somehow, that silence grew louder than any speech could have. In Miami, a college professor told her students, "Watch this. Silence can be a weapon if you know how to use it." In Phoenix, a taxi driver shook his head and told his passenger, "I'm not even an Obama fan, but the way he's staying calm, that means something." His absence became a presence of its own. Every passing hour stretched the suspense tighter, like a slingshot being pulled farther and farther back. Late that night, one of Obama's advisors stepped into his hotel room, laptop in hand, a breaking headline glowing across the screen. "Obama remains silent as Trump attacks." The advisor shifted nervously. "Sir, pressure's rising. If you don't speak tomorrow, they'll say you're hiding, or worse, that you're scared." Obama leaned back, fingers intertwined, and replied softly, "Then tomorrow, let's give them something worth listening to." Across the country, people went to sleep wondering what he would say in the morning. Some expected a fiery clapback, others a letdown. Nobody imagined what he was preparing. Morning broke over Detroit with a heaviness in the air, the kind that makes people talk quieter without knowing why. Reporters were already set up outside the Franklin Avenue Community Center before sunrise. Cameras pointed toward the entrance as if expecting a historic moment. Locals gathered outside too, families with folding chairs, teenagers with phones ready to stream, older couples wrapped in scarves, all waiting for one thing, an answer. When Obama finally stepped out just after noon, the reaction burst immediately. Cheers rolled over the crowd like a rising tide. People whistled, shouted his name, reached out their hands as if welcoming back an old friend. He had no dramatic entrance, no booming music, no theatrics. Just Barack Obama in a gray suit, collar open, calm and steady. The applause swelled for nearly 2 minutes before he raised his hand. Silence fell. He surveyed the crowd slowly, the camera zooming in on the unshaken calm of his face. Then he spoke. "I heard what was said about me yesterday," he began, voice steady. "And I know many of you are waiting for me to respond. So let me be clear, I'm not here to throw insults. That solves nothing. I'm here because we have bigger problems than name-calling. I'm here because America deserves better than finger-pointing." The crowd erupted again, sharper this time, like a release of tension they didn't know they were holding. Obama leaned closer to the microphone, his tone gentler. "When leaders spend their time blaming others for everything wrong in this country, they forget something important. Leadership is responsibility. Leadership lifts people up, it doesn't tear them down." Applause thundered, but he continued, voice rising just enough to cut through. "It's easy to stand on a stage and yell about who's to blame. It's harder to roll up your sleeves and do the work. Real leadership isn't about volume, it's about whether you leave people better than you found them." In the front row, a young man in a blue hoodie wiped his eyes. He hadn't come as a supporter, just curious, dragged there by a friend. But something in Obama's tone cracked something open inside him. Later, he'd post a video saying, "It felt like he was talking to me, like he wasn't defending himself, he was defending all of us." Obama paused, letting the meaning settle. Then he added, "I love this country too much to waste time on petty fights. What we need right now is hope. Truth. And a willingness to listen to one another, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." The crowd rose to their feet, cheering, crying, shouting. It wasn't applause for a politician, it was the sound of people finally hearing something they'd been waiting for. Behind the cameras, reporters scrambled, scribbling notes, whispering as they realized they were watching a viral moment evolve in real time. One producer leaned toward her cameraman and whispered, "This is going everywhere before he even leaves the building." As the cheers continued, Obama raised his hand one last time. His voice softened, almost conversational. "I know some folks will try to divide us. I know anger gets more clicks than unity. But every time we choose dignity over division, we prove them wrong. Every time we refuse to be dragged into the mud, we make our country stronger." His words hit with a quiet force, not loud, but undeniable, and then he delivered the line that would echo across every platform for days: "America is not broken. It is unfinished. And finishing it is up to all of us." A hush fell, brief but powerful, before the entire room erupted. Parents lifted their children. Elderly couples clasped their hands. Teens screamed through their phone screens. Obama smiled softly, like a man who knew he had just shifted the narrative. "Thank you, Detroit," he said. "Let's keep working together." He stepped away from the podium as the crowd surged forward, cameras flashing, chants rising, energy bursting. But outside that building, beyond Detroit, beyond Michigan, his words were already spreading at lightning speed. And what happened next online would turn his response into one of the defining political moments of 2025. The moment Obama stepped down from the podium in Detroit, the crowd didn't just cheer, they surged. People leaned forward, phones stretching toward him, shouting his name like they were witnessing history unfold in real time. For many, that's exactly what it felt like. Inside the community center, the noise was overwhelming. A group of college students near the back waved their phones wildly, live streaming every second. Their chat feed exploded with messages, "He destroyed that. This is why people still love him. Trump can't match this energy." In the front row, a woman named Angela James clutched her daughter's hand, tears streaking her cheeks. "That's what I wanted you to hear," she whispered. "That's leadership. Her daughter nodded, eyes wide with a mixture of pride and awe. Later, Angela told a reporter, it wasn't about defending himself. It was about reminding us who we're supposed to be. Applause continued long after Obama exited the stage. Even security staff exchanged looks, one murmuring, that felt different. Another replied, that wasn't applause for a politician. That was applause for something bigger. As people filtered out, the conversations buzzed everywhere. In the hallway, a guy wearing a Detroit Lions cap said to his friend, I came expecting him to dodge the question. But he didn't. He flipped the whole thing. Made Trump look tiny without even saying his name more than once. His friend laughed and clapped him on the shoulder. That's what people don't get. Obama doesn't need to scream, he cuts clean. Outside, reactions grew even louder. Reporters thrust microphones toward anyone willing to talk. An older veteran in a brown jacket paused to speak into a camera. I didn't vote for him, he admitted. But that was presidential. Not everyone felt moved. A Trump supporter who'd come only to protest shook her head in frustration. He's slick, I'll give him that. But it's all smooth talk. Still, even she added reluctantly, the crowd sure loved it. But the most powerful reactions weren't spoken, they were written across people's faces. Parents hugged their children. Teenagers whispered they'd never seen a speech like that. Older folks smiled softly, as though hearing echoes of something familiar. For many, the moment pulled them back to 2008. For others, it simply reminded them that calm could still exist in chaos. Once the lights dimmed inside, staff finally exhaled. One aide whispered, he just turned an attack into a rallying cry. Another added, that line, America is not broken, it is unfinished, that's going to be everywhere by tonight. They were right, before people even made it home, the speech had already burst far beyond Detroit. A teenager in Minneapolis uploaded the final 30 seconds with the caption, this hit harder than I expected. It hit 500,000 views within an hour. A grandmother in Kansas filmed herself crying while replaying his words. Her video was shared tens of thousands of times before she even realized it had gone viral. This wasn't just applause in a room, it was ignition. Across grocery stores, shoppers leaned over carts asking strangers, did you see it yet? At gas stations, drivers watched the clip on the tiny TV screens above the pumps, nodding quietly. On college campuses, students clustered around phones, some debating, others staring silently. A retired auto worker walking out of the event summed it up perfectly on local radio. Trump lit a fire last night. No doubt about it. But Obama didn't put it out, he changed it. Turned it into something that warmed people instead of burning them. By nightfall, polling firms had already begun collecting data. Focus groups told networks the same thing, Obama's calm steadiness made people feel grounded. His composure contrasted so sharply with Trump's intensity that it jolted people back into remembering what leadership could sound like, and once those clips hit social media, the reaction didn't just grow, it exploded. By sunset, Obama's speech had taken over every platform. TikTok, Instagram Reels, Twitter threads, Facebook updates from grandparents who rarely posted at all. Every feed carried the same image, the gray suit, the steady gaze, and the words, America is not broken. It is unfinished. The first viral clip came from a teenage girl who had filmed the moment live. She added simple text across the bottom, this gave me chills. In 3 hours, the video had pulled in over 4 million views, comments poured in, I needed this today. Compare this to the nonsense from last night, night and day. On Twitter, the phrase America is unfinished trended for half the day. Artists made posters. Graphic designers overlaid the quote across images of city skylines and waving flags. Some users mocked Trump by placing his rally shouts side by side with Obama's quiet precision. Late-night comedians replayed the moment again and again, pairing it with exaggerated impressions of Trump's fiery delivery. Studio audiences roared, but not everyone was laughing. For many, the speech touched something raw, something deeper than politics, and the reactions that followed would prove just how big that impact truly was. The reactions didn't stop at the arena doors. A young Iraq War veteran filmed himself from the driver's seat of his pickup, voice trembling as he spoke. "I don't care what side you're on, what he said hit me. I've seen broken things in war. America's not broken. We're scarred, sure, but unfinished. Yeah. That's the truth." By sunrise, his video had been shared 500,000 times. Even some of Obama's longtime critics were caught off guard. Conservative radio host Paul Denson, famous for taking shots at Obama, admitted live on air, "Look, I don't like the guy's politics. But that line. That was something else. He's got a way with words Trump just doesn't." His co-host grunted agreement. "Yeah, and when he talks, people listen. That's trouble for Trump." Meanwhile, online creativity exploded. In Milwaukee, college students spent the night spray painting a brick wall with a giant mural, the single word "unfinished" in red and blue. Artists on Instagram posted digital renderings. One showed the Statue of Liberty half-painted, Obama's quote stamped beneath it. Teachers began playing the clip in classrooms. A high school history teacher in St. Louis told his students, This is why rhetoric matters. Words don't just explain the future. They shape it." Even TikTok comedians jumped in. One creator stitched Trump's fiery, "Obama is the real reason America is broken," right next to Obama's measured, calm reply, captioning it, "Two very different energies." The side-by-side said more than any pundit could, but perhaps the most revealing sign of all was the silence. Some of Trump's usual defenders, the ones who normally pounced immediately, hesitated. Fox's primetime hosts mentioned the speech only briefly, clearly unsure whether going after Obama too aggressively might backfire. One segment mocked his phrasing, but the attempt drowned almost instantly in a sea of memes and praise. For everyday people scrolling through their feeds, the reaction wasn't about party lines, it was about contrast. Trump had shouted, pointed fingers, blamed. Obama stood still, spoke evenly, and offered perspective. The difference was impossible to ignore. A freshman at the University of Denver tweeted, "One screams. The other explains. Which sounds like leadership to you?" The post hit 1 million likes in 48 hours, and it wasn't just the young. An older woman in Oklahoma filmed herself watching the speech again and again, whispering, This is the America I remember. Not broken, just unfinished." Her video echoed across Facebook, joined by hundreds of similar clips from people analysts assumed had stopped listening to Obama years ago. By the weekend, social media analysts noticed something strange. Engagement around Obama's speech wasn't peaking, it was growing. Most political clips burn hot and disappear. This one kept climbing. The timing, the language, the contrast. Everything about it made the moment stick, and then the polling numbers landed. Overnight surveys painted a picture no one expected. Obama's favorability jumped nearly 10 points in just 3 days. Among voters under 30, the spike was even larger, numbers he hadn't seen since leaving office. But the real shock came from independents and moderate conservatives. Many said the speech reminded them of a different era, one where leaders didn't need to yell to be heard. Cable news couldn't stop talking about it. On MSNBC, one analyst leaned back and said, "This is what happens when you put rage next to calm. People are exhausted. Obama just gave them a breath." Over at Fox, the tone was defensive. Some called it slick packaging, others said the media was overhyping it. But even there, a few admitted, reluctantly, that it had landed harder than expected. In barbershops and diners across the Midwest, conversations shifted. A retired factory worker in Toledo told a local paper, "I've voted Republican my whole life. But that speech? He wasn't defending himself. He was defending us. It made me think." In Atlanta, a group of college students replayed the clip in their dorm lounge. One shook his head, "Man, he didn't even yell. That's what got me." His roommate nodded, "Exactly. He wasn't trying to win an argument. He was making a point." But the biggest shift came in participation. Young people, many who'd checked out of politics, started posting how Obama's words pulled them back in. Hashtags like #UnfinishedAmerica and #LeadershipMatters climbed into trending lists. teachers used the clip as writing prompts, pastors referenced it in sermons, even corporate managers mentioned it during Monday morning meetings about resilience. And it wasn't just Democrats fanning the momentum. In Nebraska, a Republican city councilman said on live radio, "I disagree with most of Obama's policies. But I'll say this, I'd rather have calm words like his than the shouting match we're stuck in now." The ripple had become a wave, and it wasn't slowing down. The host only laughed, but the clip spread everywhere, another sign that something unusual was unfolding. Naturally, Trump noticed. He jumped onto Truth Social with a flurry of posts attacking Obama, calling his speech weak and boring. But the words didn't hit the way he wanted. Screenshots of his rants were passed around on Twitter, mocked, memed, and placed side by side with Obama's calm line about dignity. Even some of Trump's most loyal supporters replied with irritation, "Stop talking about Obama. Focus on Biden." What made the moment feel different wasn't the polls or the trending hashtags. It was the atmosphere. A subtle shift across the country. People who'd grown cynical about politics suddenly sounded lighter, not hopeful exactly, but relieved to hear someone speak without shouting, without pitting neighbor against neighbor. At a high school gym in Indiana, the announcer surprised everyone before tip-off. "Remember," he said with a grin, "America isn't broken, it's unfinished." Parents in the bleachers laughed and clapped. The phrase had escaped politics and drifted into everyday conversation, a sign of just how far it had spread. News outlets picked up the shift too, stories focused not on Trump's attack but on Obama's response. Editorial boards praised the steadiness of his words, opinion writers called it an example of real leadership. The Washington Post described the speech as a master class in restraint. Even the Wall Street Journal, often critical, admitted it had struck a national nerve. For many, the shock wasn't the speech itself, but the reaction it set off. A young reporter in Cleveland tweeted, "It feels like the whole country just remembered what politics used to sound like." Thousands retweeted it with a simple, "yes." By midweek, polls showed something deeper happening. This wasn't nostalgia, it was trust shifting. When asked who better represented American values, more and more people chose Obama over Trump. That wasn't just a statistic. It was momentum, the kind no one had predicted. But just as the tide started turning, Trump prepared his counterattack, a barrage aimed at dragging the spotlight back to himself. By Thursday, cracks in his confidence were showing. His advisors saw it, and so did he. Obama's Detroit speech hadn't been just a headline, it had tapped into something deeper. Polls, hashtags, late-night reactions, all pointed to the same thing. Trump had started a fight and somehow managed to lose it without Obama raising his voice. So Trump did what he always did when cornered. He escalated. That morning, he slammed Truth Social with all caps posts. "Obama is a fraud. Worst president ever, nobody respected him." He even accused Obama of secretly orchestrating the country's current problems. The screenshots spread instantly, Twitter tore them apart, commentators, journalists, and regular users dissecting every line. Still, Trump kept going. By evening, he was back on stage, this time in Orlando. The crowd was large and loud, like Fort Myers. But something felt off. Trump launched into a long attack on Obama. Nearly 30 straight minutes. "Barack Hussein Obama," he said, leaning hard on the middle name, "is why we have chaos at the border, weak foreign policy, a country falling apart." He warned the crowd not to be fooled by smooth talk and fancy words. The audience cheered, but the sound lacked the force reporters expected. In the press pen, a journalist scribbled, "Less energy. More repetition." In the crowd, a man in a red hat leaned toward his friend. "Why is he going after Obama so much? Shouldn't he be hitting Biden?" His friend shrugged, no answer. The next day, clips from the Orlando rally circulated, but they didn't dominate conversation like Fort Myers had. Instead, they were overshadowed by new comparisons to Obama's Detroit moment. Online, people weren't debating Trump's message. They were asking why he seemed obsessed with Obama. On CNN, a panelist smirked, "Trump looks rattled. He's throwing punches at a guy who isn't even running." Even Fox News couldn't avoid the question. One commentator asked, "Is this smart strategy, or does it make him look fixated?" Meanwhile, Obama stayed silent. No interviews, no follow-ups, no clarification, and that silence hurt Trump even more. Every new rant, every insult, every yelling rally, it all sounded louder and more frantic next to Obama's calm absence. Late-night shows leaned into the contrast. One comedian joked, "Trump's yelling at Obama like an ex who refuses to text back." The crowd erupted, but beneath the laughter was a truth: Obama's stillness was shrinking Trump's presence. Inside Trump's campaign offices, the arguments became louder. One aide insisted, "We have to pivot back to Biden. We're losing the narrative." Another snapped, "If we back off now, it makes him look weak. He needs to stay on Obama." Trump, pacing with his phone in hand, barked, "No. People need to remember how bad Obama was. I built my presidency on that. We're not dropping it." But outside those walls, the public wasn't following his script. In Michigan, a local radio host opened the phone lines, and the calls told a very different story. The radio lines lit up non-stop, caller after caller. Even some who proudly identified as Trump voters admitted they were exhausted hearing about Obama again. One man put it plain, "If you're running against Biden, talk about Biden. Why are we reliving old battles?" Even conservative columnists sounded the alarm. One op-ed in the National Review warned, by resurrecting Obama as his main target, Trump risks reminding Americans why they respected Obama to begin with. For the first time in years, Trump wasn't steering the national conversation. Obama was, not through speeches, but through silence and self-control. The more aggressively Trump lashed out, the shakier he appeared, but none of that meant the fight was ending. Trump's base remained loyal, his crowds were still huge, his influence among millions was untouched, yet in the middle, the voters who actually decide elections. Obama had managed to create a rare moment of dominance, but the real test of his impact wouldn't come from rallies or viral clips. It would come from everyday Americans weighing what this clash meant for them, their families, their futures, and what leadership should look like. Across the country, people weren't just watching the clips anymore. They were talking about them. At kitchen tables. In break rooms. On sidewalks. Obama's words in Detroit and Trump's avalanche of attacks had sparked a national conversation that slipped into daily life. It wasn't just politics anymore. It was personal. In Cleveland, high school English teacher Laura Briggs paused her planned lesson and pulled up Obama's speech. Her students lounged in their seats, some rolling their eyes, until Obama said, "America is not broken. It is unfinished." The room fell silent. A kid in the back muttered, "That actually makes sense." Laura turned it into a lesson. "Think about your own life," she said. "Are you broken, or unfinished? Which one gives you hope?" The discussion filled the entire period. In a Des Moines diner, two veterans sat across from each other, breakfast untouched as they debated. "I'll say this," one said, tapping the table, "never liked him as president. But that speech? It was steady. Reminded me of a commander who understands the weight of words." His friend countered, "Maybe, but words don't fix gas prices or the border." Trump's right to call him out. The waitress refilling their coffee spoke gently, "Maybe neither fixes everything. But I know which one helps me sleep easier." They laughed, because suddenly the conversation wasn't just political. It was about trust. In a small town near Albuquerque, church ended with an unexpected moment. Pastor Michael Daniels, known for his conservative sermons, quoted Obama, "We are unfinished." He told the congregation, "That's not weakness. That's opportunity, for our country and for our faith." A woman walking out whispered to her husband, "Never thought I'd hear our pastor quoting Obama, but somehow it sounded right." Online, ordinary voices kept breaking through. A young single mom in Tennessee recorded herself late at night, dishes stacked behind her. "I'm no expert," she said softly, "but when Obama said America isn't broken, I felt that. Because I'm not broken either. I'm just still working on things. We all are." Her honesty hit a nerve. Millions watched, thousands commented, college campuses lit up with debates. In Madison, Wisconsin, a group gathered for what was supposed to be a casual pizza night. Instead, the room turned into hours of argument. A student in a Trump 2024 hoodie complained, "Everyone's acting like Obama's perfect because he said one line." Another shot back, "It's not perfection. It's tone. He made people feel like we can move forward instead of tearing each other apart." Nobody changed their mind, but all admitted the speech had gotten under their skin. In rural Montana, a rancher listening to talk radio pulled his truck over and called in, "Don't agree with Obama's politics. Never have. But I'll tell you this, I'd rather my kids hear his kind of words than all the screaming we get now." The host paused, surprised, thanked him, and moved on quickly. Not every reaction was supportive. In a Jacksonville sports bar, Trump loyalists replayed the speech on a TV and booed every line. One man slammed his beer down and said, "That's weakness. You fight fire with fire, not poetry." His friends agreed, until one woman hesitated. "Maybe," she said quietly, "sometimes you fight fire with water." The table fell silent before laughter eased the tension. All these conversations, different places, different people, had one thing in common: the country was reflecting in real time. For the first time in years, Americans weren't just repeating talking points, they were wrestling with the questions underneath: anger or calm, blame or responsibility, division or dignity. A Minneapolis journalist summed it up perfectly in her column: "This moment feels less like a political fight and more like a mirror." Americans are looking at Obama's restraint and Trump's fury, and asking which one looks like the country they believe in. But while Americans debated in classrooms, churches, diners, and living rooms, the story was nowhere near finished. The real conclusion wouldn't come from the speeches or the headlines. It would come from the lesson people carried with them, the message born out of this collision between two completely different visions of leadership. By the end of the week, it was obvious, this wasn't just another flare-up in America's non-stop political storm. What began as a heated attack at a rally in Fort Myers had transformed into something much larger, a moment that forced the country to think about leadership, dignity, and the weight of words. Everywhere you turned, the contrast stood out like a spotlight. On one side was Trump, loud, relentless, swinging at a rival who wasn't even on the ballot. On the other side was Obama, steady, composed, refusing to be pulled into the noise, reminding people that politics could still offer a sense of hope instead of chaos. But the real surprise wasn't in what either man said. It was in how Americans responded. In Philadelphia, a father leaned across the dinner table toward his teenage son. "Listen to both of them," he said, "then decide who sounds like someone you trust in a difficult moment." The boy thought quietly before answering, "The one who makes me feel like everything isn't already lost." In an Arizona nursing home, residents gathered around the television, nodding along as Obama's words replayed. One woman whispered, "It feels like he reminded us we're allowed to believe again." The impact reached far beyond political circles. Coaches used the message to motivate their teams, teachers turned it into lessons about resilience, parents used it to talk to their kids about character. The words "America is unfinished" became more than a line, they became a symbol. A reminder that people aren't broken, just still in progress. Meanwhile, Trump kept firing away, more rallies, more insults, more attempts to reignite the fight, but each new blast felt smaller than the one before. Analysts said it outright: he had lost control of the narrative. For the first time in years, he wasn't shaping the conversation, that he was chasing it. Obama, however, didn't need to say another thing. His silence after Detroit only made the moment louder. He had spoken once, calmly and clearly, and then stepped back, allowing the country to interpret the moment for itself. That restraint became part of the story. Because leadership isn't just about volume, sometimes it's about timing, knowing when to speak, when to hold back, and how to present yourself in a way that steadies people instead of shaking them. America was reminded of something simple but powerful: rage may grab the spotlight, but calm earns respect; anger may spark a reaction, but dignity creates something that lasts. In a nation worn down by years of tension, the contrast between fury and composure felt like a mirror. People had to decide what they wanted to see reflected back at them in their leaders: someone who points fingers or someone who stays grounded. By week's end, one thing was unmistakable: Trump's attack had backfired. It handed Obama an unexpected win in the court of public opinion, not because Obama shouted louder, but because he chose not to shout at all. He rose above it, and in doing so, he reminded millions that real strength doesn't always roar, sometimes it speaks softly, yet carries farther. And maybe the real lesson here isn't about Trump or Obama, maybe it's about us, about the energy we choose to elevate, the tone we decide to follow, and the country we want to shape. Because as Obama said, America isn't broken, it's unfinished. And what comes next depends not just on the leaders holding microphones, but on all of us who are watching, listening, and deciding which example to walk behind. That if this moment showed us anything, it's that dignity can outshine anger. And calm can echo louder than fury. That's not just politics, that's a life truth. And if you believe lessons like this matter, if you want more stories that cut through the noise and get to the heart of what's really happening in America today, make sure to subscribe. There's much more ahead, and this is only the beginning.